Welcome, one and all, to another session of Stelmo's Rants and Raves. I'm Stelmo. Let's just jump right in there. So, I guess it's a matter of deja vu. You know, I, I I don't get at all what's going on in Iran. In fact, quite frankly, I think our president is being made to look foolish. And I don't know when he is going to Um, I don't even know what term to use here. Wake up, perhaps, is a good term. I don't know. But look, in Iran, the IRGC controls all the big weaponry and everything. And to exclude them from the peace negotiations, and again, I have a hard time calling it peace negotiations because this is more or less what it appears like is they're just negotiating the terms of the surrender. And it's not the Iranians who are surrendering, it's the United States. Our president wants out of there. It's clear to everybody that he wants out of there. And the Iranians are just being the same Iranians that we've had out there for close to 5 decades now. And they have no real desire for peace. They kind of view themselves as the world champions, and they're always going to be a problem because they're religious zealots. They believe God is on their side. And so, nobody else, none of the Republican pundits are talking about this. And I find it problematic because this is why, in a longer term, the Republican Party ends up losing so often because they just can't get anything done, it seems. And what has the president done now that I think is so egregious in Iran? Well, he stood down our naval blockade. Keep in mind, he was looking to basically starve them financially and thus causing their demise. So, and let's keep in mind, we do this at great cost to our country. And so we have this alleged, some of the mainstream media call it a peace agreement, but I think the administration more or less was calling it a deal, not necessarily a peace deal. And they keep referring it to as a ceasefire. And it's not a ceasefire. There hasn't been a ceasefire over there because, ceasefire is a pretty, uh, it's it's a well-defined word, and everybody understands the definition of it, and everybody understands what cease means. It means to stop, okay, to stop firing. But yet both sides continue firing, and this has gone on now for as long as they've been saying that they're having these ceasefires. The IRGC has made clear that they are not going to negotiate or anything with the United States. They're going to move forward. And after we stood down and allegedly opened the Strait of Hormuz, the first ones out were all the Iranian ships with all that oil that they sold. So after trying to starve them financially, President Trump decides to give them a windfall. And now that they have all this money, they're able to pay all of their forces and stuff that they keep them all happy. And they believe, again, they're religious zealots. They believe that God or Allah is the one who is responsible for them now getting this infusion of cash. And in the meantime, we blow something up they blow something up, and and the risk. I've said this before, and I'm going to continue to say it. The big risk right now that President Trump faces is if the Iranians are able to, let's say, get lucky with one or two of their missiles or drones or whatever it is that they're firing, and they take out something over there in the Middle East that's going to cause a type of irreparable harm. You know, I read an article that was talking about how the damage to our military facilities that we have throughout the Middle East that have been targeted by the Iranians have suffered far worse damage than we're publicly admitting to. You know, we're dealing with an evil um, force over there. And the president needs to end this. And the only way that he's going to successfully end it is to go in and take out the IRGC. I don't think it's that hard of a task. I really don't. You know, I don't think that they have at this point in time a central government. You know, we started out this, call it a war. And when we did, we had the support of the Iranian people, the vast majority of the Iranian people. Somewhere probably around 90% of the Iranian people supported our going in there. They thought that their freedom was at hand and that the United States was their savior. And Donald Trump had the opportunity to go down in history as the greatest president of all times. But I think he's now destroyed that. And if he doesn't fix this soon, he's going to be near the bottom of the list. Because now we have the Iranians coming out and saying, yeah, we're going for nuclear weapons. They decided, oh, let's not hide it anymore. Let's just come right out and say it because they see the weakness in the president's position. You know, he wants to be known as the president of peace. Well, unfortunately, historically, uh, these leftist loons, you know, aren't looking for peace, okay? They're looking for the great jihad, the spread of Muslim or of Islam, where people are given two choices. You either convert and become an active participant in Islam, or you are sent for mortuary services. And that's it. And that's what they believe. And there's nothing the president's going to do to change that because, again, they're religious zealots. And there hasn't been a peace. And, you know, now it's been perhaps 2 months ago already when the German chancellor come out and said that, you know, the Iranians were really playing the United States. And Donald Trump got all mad. He's going to pull troops out and everything. And the reality is that the German chancellor was being honest. He was seeing what was going on and he was just an observant making this comment. And it's a pretty accurate comment, Mr. President, because anybody who has open eyes and is watching what's going on realizes that you've been played. And you continue. You know, you keep coming out, I'm going to blow the country off the map. This, that. You know, it doesn't work with these people. It doesn't work. And it really shows your weakness. And I fear, what I fear is our enemies are watching us saying, "Oh, this Donald Trump, he's a peace guy. He doesn't like confrontation, so we're going to be taking advantage of that." And that's what I expect to happen. I hope I'm proven wrong. And of course, let's talk about why this is happening because nothing here has changed. The president, I believe, has been informed about the economic calamity that the world is going to be facing. And I guess they have him convinced that the war is the cause of this. The reality, I believe, is that this is just a continuation of the problems from the Biden administration. Donald Trump should never have taken credit for anything with this economy because it's not a good economy. And the government can keep lying all they want, and they're doing such a disservice. And what's going to be the result? Well, look at New York with Mondami. Look at all these other socialist candidates that keep getting elected. And now they're raising, people are starting to raise the alarm bells. And the reality is, again, if you look at what's happening now and look at history, you'll see that so many times in history, a party opens up to invite a seemingly fringe group into their tent. And then the next thing you know, they kick the regulars out of the tent and they take over. And that's what's happening right now. The socialists are consolidating their takeover of the Democratic Party. They realized that they were going to do so much better taking over the Democrat Party than to remain as the Democratic Socialist of America. So we now have these socialists starting to take power all across the country. And I suggest that this movement is going to grow exponentially. And why is it? Because our government is lying to us. They've been lying to us about the inflation numbers ever since the inflation problems started back in the Biden administration. It's been a continual growth in the cost of goods that people are purchasing every day, goods that people need. And, you can lie about the inflation, but you can't fool people when it comes to the economy because the economy is something that they live day to day. They see what's going on. They know what's happening in the jobs market. You can go out there and claim there's 25 trillion jobs, but if people can't find them, and if they're not bringing in the money they need to bring, it's going to be a problem. And this is a growing problem because inflation is higher than whatever raise, assuming even that they get a raise in their pay, is not keeping up. And these people are falling further and further behind. Many of them have unpaid bills. Home foreclosures are on the rise. People they're tapped out. They're tapped out. And I will say, they have gotten the price of gas down. But, we have a sort of like a conflux of issues. And yeah, the price of gas has come down, but it's still above where it had been. And we haven't seen, uh, I'll call it the secondary inflation, that it just takes time for the rise in the cost of energy to filter through all the different levels it has to get to. And so for months now, we're going to be seeing this increase in inflation. It's going to, and it more and more with each rise in inflation, you have people who are falling out of being, how should we say, productive Americans. And, you know, when you're on the floor, you can't fall out of bed, okay? And more people are finding themselves on the floor each and every month. And when you're on the floor, The freeness of socialism sounds so good. And so, yes, yes, this is going to be a continuing trend. And you know what? It's quite possible they're going to take over the country because our politicians do not have a solution to the inflation. And the solution is get spending under control. But they have no desire to do that. And let's look at the Trump administration. They're looking for an extra $80 billion because of the war in Iran. Now, of that, the highest number I've seen is 24 billion has been the actual expenditures thus far. So let's say you expect to double it. That's 48. Where's the rest of the money going? You see, they just can't do standalone bills. They got to be tacking this, that, and everything else onto it. And that's a problem because all of these standalone bills, once they get passed, all they do is add 100% of their costs to our national debt because we don't have that money, so we have to borrow it. Or it's alleged that we're borrowing it. I'm not sure that there are any enough buyers for our debt right now. When inflation starts rearing its ugly head, interest rates have to go up. And it's interesting. President Trump is already complaining about his Treasury Secretary because he can't lower rates, Mr. President. He's got to fight this inflation. But you want lower rates. I get where you're coming from. You think the lower rates are going to stimulate business and everything. But here's the problem right now with the looking at the economic picture that we're facing. These banks and stuff, they've really tightened their lending standards and they're just not lending the money. And we're now finding out about all of the fraud and crime and the white collar stuff that is going on. And as a result of that, there is this implosion in the private credit markets. And that's going to filter through the economy. And I don't think that's going to play out very well. So we have all this headwind coming at us. And yes, in part, the headwind is partially caused by the Iranian war. And that's why I believe the advisors have told the president, you got to get out of this war. It's causing a worldwide depression. So that's what the president's doing. But in doing so, he's showing the weakness. These are religious zealots. If they enter into an agreement with you, Mr. President, it's not going to last too long. And you're going to be blamed because now they're openly saying, yes, they want nuclear weapons. In fact, there are rumors. And let me be clear, these are rumors, I think. But anyway, there are these allegations that the Iranians are seeking to buy 5 nuclear weapons from North Korea. And North Korea is starved for cash, so who knows? Yeah, they're part of uh, our current axis of evil. And again, the president had this golden opportunity to soundly defeat the IRGC, to let the people take over their country. I mean, that was the game plan, Mr. President, wasn't it? Didn't you tell the people to take to the streets and take back their government? And you had their back, of course, if they started killing people. So they started killing people. They're still killing people. And apparently that doesn't bother you anymore. I think, look, I know the Democrats aren't the answer. Yet, I suggest, Mr. President, you got some blood on your hands. You told them you had their back, and now you deserted them. I still am baffled. I cannot figure out why they haven't gotten weapons to the Iranian people. I've seen the Iranian people doing short videos, and during the videos holding up papers saying, please send us weapons. The people, they despise the IRGC. And Mr. President, if you allow them to remain in power, you are going to lose for a generation or two or three the Iranian people. The Iranian people who see you as their savior. They're now wondering, hey, was this guy playing us? And that's what it looks like, Mr. President. It looks like you played them. And I suggest when history is written, and as some of my history professors used to say, it takes 100 years before you get an accurate reflection of history, because it takes that long to have enough neutral, disinterested parties and able to tell an accurate reflection of what really happened. And I think when people look at this situation, uh, the problem is going to be the United States and the president for starting something that they were unwilling to finish. I get it. They're terrified of putting boots on the ground. Well, uh, you know, if, Mr. President, you were told that the bombing campaign alone was going to do it and it hasn't done it, well, sounds to me that some people might need to be fired. But we don't see that happening as well. We don't, all we see is this continuation of the nonsense. And today's Monday. Yeah, I'm a little remiss here. I should have looked at what the markets are doing here in pre opening trading, and I suggest it could be a bloodbath today. Then again, people are going to say deja vu. It's the same nonsense we've been going through now for a couple months. The only difference is now the president's providing money and funds to these people. So the way they look at that is hey, this is, Allah. He has provided us all this great money. And we're now going to put that money to use. And you, Mr. President, you are very, it's unclear what exactly you're going to do. I know yesterday they were showing the flights from America to the Middle East, which they're saying were in a greater number than prior to the start of hostilities the first time. And I don't know if this is because you're actually planning something or it's just another one of your scare tactics, like when you say, I'm going to blow the whole country up. Well, Mr. President, if you do that, you'll probably not only be impeached, but removed from office. Because we all know that the only way you're going to blow that whole country up is to use nuclear weapons. And history will really, really not be kind on you if you go that route right now. And so it seems to me there's a simple solution. End the war, do what's necessary. Yet, I think they got to put boots on the ground. But do I think it's a big thing? Do I think that it is something that's going to mirror what happened in Kuwait, Operation Desert Storm? No, I don't think so. I think, we have two divisions. We have the 82nd Airborne Division, and we have the 101 Air Assault. And both of these are qualified with air assault, which enables them to rappel out of helicopters. And I think all we have to do is use small groups of soldiers to take on these IRGC strongholds. There's only a few of them throughout the country. They lost a ton of people during the bombing campaign. The Department of Defense released a number of videos and showing them blowing up various military vehicles and the like. And most of these were manned, and with each takeout of the equipment, we're also taking out the personnel. So, you know, I've said before, and I'll always say, I get my uh, news on what's happening in the Iranian theater from 2CTV. And 2CTV, I mean, it just does a great job of showing what's actually going on. The stuff our mainstream media uh, is not putting out there. And I ask myself, why aren't they putting some of this stuff out there? Because it certainly doesn't make our president look good. And we know the mainstream media is not far from being anything close to being pro-Trump. So it's not like they're hiding something to protect the president. So I'm not exactly sure why they're hiding it. And of course, if anyone out there has any answers to these questions and dilemmas out that are out there, please feel free to comment down below. I'd love to hear it, and maybe I'll get back on and discuss these comments because I'm just baffled. It just seems to me it's so easy, and I know there's the risk of losing some soldiers. I get it. I spent 6 years in the Army. I know that it's all volunteer force. Nobody twisted anyone's arm to be there. And yes, sometimes people die, but sometimes even in peacetime, during training missions and stuff, you have soldiers, sailors, Marines dying. Perhaps not in great number, but I don't think any great number is going to die in Iran. I think, look, you have the majority of Iranians on our side, or at least they're on our side to the extent they want the IRGC gone. They want it out of their lives. They want their freedom back. And we're allegedly a bastion of freedom. But yet, for some reason, after promising the Iranian people, you're reneging on those promises. And ultimately, you're going to have to go in there because they're going to keep embarrassing you. And I don't care, maybe you like the embarrassment. But again, our enemies are watching this with open eyes. They see the weakness that you're portraying. And I know you can come out there and say, he blew up their Air Force, their Navy, and everything. But they're still able to fire at the other Arab countries. They're still able to fire at our bases. So, for as much destruction as you've done, Mr. President, it's not enough. There's still a viable force, and they're illustrating this all the time. And now that you've given them all these millions of dollars, because that's what they've gotten when you allowed their ships laden with oil to leave. You said, yeah, the Strait of Hormuz is open. They got their ships out, and then the problem started, right? It's always how they act, and they're making you look like such a fool. And I have a lot of disdain for a lot of these Republican pundits out there because they're all touting whatever points that the administration wants put out there, and the people know that they're being misled, and the people don't like it. Donald Trump, and he still has a lot of wide support, but it's an ever decreasing number. And it's the economy that's going to do it, which is why he wants to end the situation in Iran. But, Mr. President, the only way that you're going to solve and I'm not even sure that solves the economic problem, but it takes it out of the equation, is to open up the Strait of Hormuz, to do it with whatever force is necessary. It was like a month or a month and a half ago, you said you were going to do that, and then it doesn't happen. It remains virtually closed. Yeah, there's some vessels have gotten out, but a vast majority of them haven't gotten out. And from what I understand, a lot of them, their insurance companies told them, well, our insurance isn't going to be in effect if you take those vehicles through an active combat zone. And I can't say I blame the insurance companies. There's a very high risk that they're not going to make it. And the Iranians have fired on 2 ships now. And the Iranians are saying, hey, well, and okay, I'm falling and committing part of the problem. You know, the president has excluded the IRGC from the peace talks because they're a problem. But somehow he expects the civilian government, who he is dealing with, to control the military arm, the IRGC. They've never been able to do that in the 5 decades they've been in existence. So you're thinking it's going to happen now is, I think, delusion at best. So the economic uncertainty continues. The situation in Iran continues. There's no end in sight. And I think this just goes to aggravate the conditions that we are going to have to suffer through. And it's a shame. It really is a shame that it's taken uh, this new way. We started it, and when we start something, we need to finish it. If history hasn't taught us anything, it's don't start a war you're not going to finish. And that's what we've done here. And it doesn't bode well for us. Anyway, that's all I got for right now. And you all have a great day. Stay safe. Certainly is a crazy world out there. It gets crazier by the day. Unbelievable. If anyone would have told me when I was younger that I would be seeing and hearing about some of the stuff I'm seeing and hearing on a regular basis these days, I'd have thought they were nuts. I would have thought they needed to go and have a few extra sessions with their psychiatrist. But we're living it now. We can't escape the reality. And so we deal with it. Anyway, have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.